What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another daily drop brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me as he always does, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here for a UNC football-related drop. In honor of the bye week, in honor of Carolina being 4-0, we're going to do 3 stars in this one from both offense and defense. For those who don't know, from some long time THI subscribers, we put out 3 stars after every game where we kind of pick, 3 guys that really stood out in the game. Going to be doing kind of the same idea for this again for the offense and for the defense. So AJ, real quickly before we dive into it, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We'll talk about them a little bit later on, but big thank you to them for sponsoring this show. Let's start on offense, AJ. How do we want to do this? Should I just go ahead and list the 3 that we have? Because we've already decided this. Should we just go ahead and list and talk about it a little bit?
One by one. Let's go one by one.
All right, first one on the list, we'll go, I think this
We're flying by the seat of our pants, man.
Yeah, man, we don't rehearse this stuff. We fly into it. I was like, we could just talk about them all at the same time, but let's just run through them real quickly, one by one. Drake Maye being, I think, the first guy that comes on here. You can't really have a 3 stars list with this team and with this program over the past couple of years without having him on it, especially when it comes to the offense. So Drake Maye coming in is the first 3-star, we'll say, of the show.
Okay. I mean, like, what can I say about that? Of course.
I know, right?
He's incredible. And the thing about it is he's one of the stars. He's an obvious star. Someone even commented on our board. And there was a pause there because I was trying to think of something real clever to say, but I guess
you couldn't do it.
Is it? Because, like, of course. Yeah, okay. Drake's one. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah,
someone actually said you should always have Drake on that list. I don't think Drake was on the list for the first game. I can't remember. But, yes, Drake. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't. I don't think he's fully in sync with the offense just yet. And he's already been really good. But if people didn't know about last year, they'd be thrilled with the way he's played. He only has 5 touchdown passes, and I think that they need to strike more. They need to kind of let him loose a little bit more, and I think that those numbers will go up. But love how he's managing games, and they're 4-0, and they're averaging 35 points a game. So they do have 2 touchdowns in overtime, and they have a kick return. So take away 21 points in 4 games, still averaging over 30 points a game. I do think the offense has left points in the field. I do think they have not been as dynamic as they need to be and should be. But I do think all those things will come together because I believe that every aspect of this team is just kind of, cruising uphill a little bit. They're getting better and better each week. I think offense is right there. And when he's comfortable with everything and when Chip Lindsey kind of lets him loose, we'll see.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
And as Mr. T would say back in the day, I pity the fool who has to defend that. So, God, that's terrible.
Yeah, if you've got an argument.
I would say, let's take that out of the pod. I was trying to think of something real cheesy to say, and I think I succeeded. He's always going to be on there because he's so good, most important position, puts his body on the line. I don't think people understand how tough he is. Yeah. He was hurt last week when he got hit on that flea flicker. His ear was ringing.
Oh, you could tell just watching it on TV, something was going on with it. Yeah.
He's gotten up slowly a couple of times this year. I think he takes too many hits. Mm-hmm. So his protection's got to be better, and Drake's got to just run out of bounds sometimes or just slide a little bit sooner.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit smarter for sure, especially when you're the guy. Second guy on the list, you're talking about protection. I think it's Willie Lampkin. Offense, we didn't struggle with coming up with 3 because obviously there's a lot of guys to choose from, but kind of narrowing down based on a few other guys because there's not a ton of standouts that we're kind of accustomed to seeing with this offense. Drake Maye is obviously one of them, but there's not like you've got a receiver that's just putting up incredible numbers so far. You've got a running back who's just rushed for an incredible amount of yards so far. But Willie Lampkin has to be on this list. And I was texting you before this kind of saying, I feel like he has to be on here because we've seen the offensive production from the offensive line, go down in his absence over the past couple of games in terms of protecting Drake Maye and some of the run blocking as well. So I think Willie Lampkin has to be on this list almost solely for that and how good he was in those first 2 games.
Yeah, people say, well, you can't put him on there. He missed 2 games. Well, that's precisely why he's on here because we now have clear evidence of what the line's like with him and without him. Mm-hmm. First 2 games with Willie Lampkin out there, 2 sacks allowed, and the run, they were running like crazy. And the inside runs, they had a tremendous amount of success on the ground. Last 2 games, very little success on the ground, 7 sacks allowed. So 7 of the 9 sacks without him. And the 2 games in which the ground game has been totally thwarted, he's not been in there as well. So he is one of the stars. He's really good. I think he's their best offensive lineman. And if they get him back for Syracuse, he's healthy the rest of the way, this team has a better chance of achieving its goals. So, yeah, I'm with you right there. And I think that we both kind of said that. And I think Dina even said it too. We were doing a text three-way. Mm-hmm. So we're all kind of seeing that. And it does speak a little bit to no one's really exploded in the skill areas yet. There have been some good guys, and that's where our third is going to be. Skill guy who's been pretty good, maybe better than expected, which is probably why he is one of these three as well. Defense was easy. Defense, you had a lot of candidates. You had 4 really good ones. Offense, it's kind of tough to come up with 3.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It 100% is. And last guy we'll talk about on offense, because this is another one we kind of went back and forth with, like you mentioned. I was thinking potentially Armani Hampton you can make a case for. He hasn't been necessarily spectacular, but he's had some good games in the start of the season, particularly that App State game as well, and has scored a good amount of touchdowns too. So I think leading rusher for the Tar Heels could make a case for him potentially being on there. Could make a case for Nate McCullum, but I think if you were to put with Nate McCullum, you'd probably be basing that so far really on one game with how good he was against Minnesota. So we decided to go with J.J. Jones, leading receiver for the Tar Heels. I think he's caught like 5 less balls than McCullum, who's right behind him in terms of yardage. But I think what J.J. Jones has been able to do, he's kind of provided and proved to be a little bit of that deep threat that they were missing as well. With a lot of his catches have been deep balls and some of that over the top stuff that maybe has surprised me a little bit, because he was always a kind of a tall possession type receiver, but I didn't really see him having some of the speed that he has and able to get over the top as well as he has so far this year. So I think he deserves credit for that one. And that's another reason we decided to put them as the final star for the offense.
Yeah, and Omarion only had one really good game. He's got 149 yards and 47 carries against 3 Power 5 schools. JJ is it. JJ had a big game against Minnesota. Comes back this past weekend, 117 yards receiving, a career high for him. He was targeted 8 times and 6 receptions. I got to look back at the Minnesota numbers, but I think in the last 2 games, he's been targeted 15 times and has 11 receptions.
Mm-hmm. He's been good.
Over 200 yards, and his big catches are setting up touchdowns. What we're watching him do right now is become a very reliable target for Drake Maye, and he's the one receiver who's consistently gotten open in all 4 games. Mm-hmm. So he's targeted. He's there. He makes himself available. He's strong. When he runs that post, he gets inside the DB, and if the ball's there, he's going to catch it. He's got good hands. He's strong. He's a really, really smart guy on and off the field. So he's not going to make any screwball mistakes or anything like that. And he is that fade in the end zone guy. Yeah. If they want to run that fade in the end zone, they've got some tight ends and they've got JJ. And I think he's at a point now where he could do some Quinshaw Davis-like things in the end zone. So he's a really nice player, and I think he's going to get better because you could see the way he's playing. It's like his confidence is way up there. He disappeared for a while last year. Mm-hmm. Played a ton of snaps, wasn't targeted a lot, and a lot of people kind of cast him aside thinking, well, it's going to be Paysor, McCollum, Walker, and maybe it would have been that at the start of the year. But Walker's not there, and they're relying pretty heavily on JJ, and I think they're going to lean on him more and more as the season goes on.
Agreed. No, I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from him so far this season. Like I said, particularly with being kind of one of those deep threat guys. He's an emotional leader out there too. I mean, he's very vocal with his teammates. He's kind of a rah-rah guy a little bit. I've seen it firsthand on the sideline. So deserves some credit for that. He's been around the program longer than a lot of people think. Yeah, I feel like he just got here not too long ago, but he is considered an experienced guy in that room. Before we move on to defense, AJ, want to give a thank you again to our sponsor, BetterHelp, as this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And guys, do you ever find that just as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly just won't stop talking to you? I deal with this all the time. Your thoughts start racing before bed or at other inopportune moments. And it turns out one of the great ways to make those racing thoughts go away is to talk them through. And therapy gives you a place to do that so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. I think we talked about it on the football show, AJ, but I think this is something that a lot of people deal with. I mean, I have these instances a lot where trying to wind down a little bit in the evening, got a lot of maybe racing thoughts going on about maybe what's coming up later in the week that I'm maybe a little anxious or stressed out about. Work can get a little bit hectic sometimes, or maybe just other life events you got going on. I think we can all relate to that feeling of just laying in bed and staring at the ceiling, not being able to fall asleep for a little bit. And again, like we've talked about in this, BetterHelp can help you get through that, because therapy is a huge tool that helps empower you to be the best version of yourself, something that I think all of us are trying to do ultimately. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule as well, which is huge. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charges. Get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/THI. Again, that's /THI to get 10% off your first month. Links in the description below. Big thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this drop. All right, AJ, let's start on the defensive side now with our 3 stars from the first 4 games. And I mean, I'm torn right now, AJ, with who to start with. I think these 3 were relatively easy to pick out, but when you talk about maybe the first guy to start with, you could start with any of them. We'll go with Kaimon Rucker solely because he's first on my list. Another guy that's just been spectacular. He always produces. He's always produced in his time at North Carolina. It just seems like he's always been one of those guys that I call him Mr. Reliable in some ways, because it always feels like you kind of know what you're going to get out of Kaimon Rucker, and you can't say the same about all other players on the team. So you can't have a 3 stars on defense and not have Kaimon Rucker on it, right? I mean, come on, guys.
He's an amazing pass rusher, but he's so much more than that. One of the primary job for a jack is to set the edge. He sets the edge so well. He's such a presence there. He gets to the quarterback. He can cover. He's done a nice job in coverage. His grades in coverage have been pretty strong. And what you've got with him, and you in concert with Cedric Gray, an inside linebacker, you got 2 exceptionally smart guys, real life smart and football smart out there playing such key roles, communicating and playing roles where you have to adjust on the fly as quickly as anybody else. And they're so good at that. And they have 2. By the way, Cedric would have been my first just because I look at him as
that's why I said it's tough.
The defense.
Tough.
But it's okay. It's okay going either way. And I don't think those guys would have a problem with going Kaimon first in the trio that we're doing. But he's also a guy that has a knack for making big plays. The other night, they needed a big play. And he goes ahead and makes the sack, puts them in a hole, and that's the punt that Huzzie ended up returning for a touchdown. Mm. Sometimes there are guys that when they do things, they just do it and you move on. Then there are guys that when they do something, gets everybody jacked up. Mm-hmm. I think Kaimon Rucker has reached a point now where his high-end moments are so infectious that it just fuels the rest of the team. And he did it against South Carolina. He did it at times in the other 2 games, and he did it the other night. He absolutely did it the other night. And that makes he makes everyone else better because they feed it off of him. Plus, he handles his role so well. There's so much trust with those guys. Like Cedric Power and Kaimon, they never, ever wonder if the other's doing their job. And I think they've developed enough trust in the guys in front of them, but the same thing. Sometimes some of the guys get beat and they take themselves out of place, some of the younger defensive linemen. But those guys, and then you add Huzzie to the mix because he's just stepped right in and meshed right in. They know what they're doing, and that's why this group has adjusted well after some struggles early. That's why they get better as the game goes on, because they've got guys like this. There's so much trust on defense. There's so much pre-snap intelligence and communication. And when you have Rucker and Gray on the field and Eccles and Huzzie and Chapman's a smart guy, Bigger's a smart guy. I mean, these guys, this is a high level of football smarts they have on defense. And we're seeing the result of that every Saturday. So Kaimon right now would probably be the team's top defensive player if they handed out some kind of an award. So I'm with you on that. I think that sometimes Cedric's strengths can't be measured in stats.
Yeah, you don't show up in stat sheet. Yeah, no, that's a great way to lead off Cedric because he's the next guy we're going to talk about. You got to have Cedric Gray on this list again, and I think you talked about. I don't think we need to necessarily sit here and talk about what he is as a linebacker because I think people know how good he is. I think it's the intangibles that you've talked about that don't show up on the stat sheet. That for me is where he shines, and I have the pleasure of being able to kind of be on the field before the games, which is it's a really cool thing to be able to do, and during games as well. And it's Mac tells us that Cedric Gray is a leader on this team, but if you didn't know that and you just went and watched warmups for the game, you'd probably 33 would probably stand out and you'd be like, yeah, he's definitely one of the leaders on this team. It shows he's so good at that. And he's the quarterback for that defense. He's so important to the defense's success and what they've been able to do this season. But again, I think the leadership that he brings not only to the linebacker room, not only to the defensive unit as a whole, but the team as a whole is so incredibly important. And that's stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. So again, just like Rucker, if you're going to do 3 stars on defense, you have to have Cedric Gray on the list. It's that simple.
For some reason, Cedric isn't as big a name as he should be among Carolina fans.
Yeah. I've kind of thought that for a while now. Yeah, it's a good point.
His video, when we run his interviews and stuff, they don't get great traffic.
Yeah, it's not like Drake, especially.
Any Carolina fan watching or listening to this, you guys need to watch his interviews because it is he is totally honest. It's football stuff. If he disagrees with the premise of the question, he tells you, and sometimes he'll correct you. And I love that.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that. I am going to miss him when he goes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really dig Cedric Gray interviews. I wish we got him every day of the week, and I bet you he'd be really interesting every day of the week. Not all these guys would be, but he would be. He is a guy, I think he's as good a linebacker as they've had since Butch Davis was there.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it's even up.
I think those guys were really good, and I think Cedric is in their lane. Mm-hmm. And he's going to play in the NFL. He's going to play for a long time in the NFL. I wrote a piece that we ran Tuesday morning about him, about the intangibles. And there are so many. I mean, physically, he's a phenomenal player, right? But the intangibles make him next level phenomenal. GMs they're going to be drooling over this guy when they interview him. He's going to win the interviews. When he starts talking to teams, when he goes to the combine and he fills out the questions, he's going to win.
Yeah, for sure.
Trust me.
Yeah.
And Carolina fans need to appreciate the fact that they have Cedric Gray for at least 8 more games. Mm-hmm. And he's so competitive. I can see him playing in a bowl game. Yep. They're going to have him. And you need to appreciate it because he is damn good. Mm-hmm. And he is a guy who loves Carolina. He could have gone to the NFL last year, probably would have been a third-round pick, upper part of the third round of the draft, and made some money. But he wants to win. He wants to get better in some areas, but he wants to win. He could sense that this team was going to be what we've seen they are so far, with so much more room to grow. And he knows that. And if he continues to have the followers, everybody in that side of the ball follow him, and really both sides of the ball, they're going to have a better chance of reaching their goals.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about Cedric Gray.
No,
and Carolina fans, you guys got to get on board the Cedric train, man. Mm-hmm. He is damn good.
Yeah,
and
he goes under
he's
the radar.
Someone that Tar Heel fans should be buying number 33 jerseys, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he goes under the radar because he's played on a defense that struggled at times, and that persona has not been able to kind of go away. They haven't been able to quite shake that yet. They've done a great job of doing it. But he was
first team All ACC last year. He made some All America teams.
I know it's weird. I was just thinking that, like, over the past couple of weeks, kind of thinking about how good he is and how talented he is and how integral he is for this team. But it just feels like you said, he's just not a guy that a lot of Carolina fans talk about that much, and they should talk about him. He's really, really good. Last guy on the list, Edge. I think everybody kind of knows who this one's going to be as well. It's got to be Alijah Huzzie. I mean, just what he's been able to do in his 4-game sample size here. It's funny because every time I see him play, AJ, and every time I see him make plays, I think back to the podcast we did. No, I don't even know when it was now, around the time that he committed. We did one podcast where we were talking about how Carolina upgraded in the portal for sure. And we got some backlash for it. I think a lot of people didn't necessarily agree with it at the time, which is fine. I mean, that's why we do it. I mean, you can have your own opinion. That's totally, we welcome that. But every time that he goes out there and make plays, it just solidifies that even more, that Carolina knew exactly why he was going after him. A lot of people, when saw, East Tennessee State, like, what are we doing here? Like, East Tennessee State's who we're going. Tony Grimes and Storm Duck are leaving. We replace him with a guy from East Tennessee State. He's the best corner I've seen at North Carolina in a very long time, and that's through 4 games. He makes plays.
Yeah,
he is a difference maker on defense. And there's times, it's funny because as a corner, and he does play that star position a lot, sometimes as a corner, just not being talked about is good because it means you're not being targeted. It means nobody's doing anything on you. But his game's not like that. No, he doesn't. Nobody really catches a lot of balls on him, but he flies around the field and he makes plays all over the place. And then you throw in his
always around the ball.
Yeah, what he does on special teams and what he does as a punt returner now, with returning that punt against Pitt, just kind of showing that sample size there of what he can do in that realm. I mean, he's just a ball hawk, AJ, and he's been absolutely fantastic in his first 4 games at North Carolina. So got to have Huzzie on here as well.
Yeah. There's a reason things happen sometimes. And we were very clear and very adamant, and we got a lot of pushback. We kept insisting that they upgraded through the portal, particularly at the corner spots.
Yeah.
And I do think, and just in the secondary alone, and the more Stick Lane learns everything, gets used to all the communication, he's a good player.
Yeah,
he great out that great last week, but he's a really good player. He's going to be fine. But Huzzie's on a different level. One of the guys that left hasn't even taken a snap on defense this year. One of the guys we've mentioned. And I have no joy in that. I'm just making a point. Sometimes you got to make a change. Sometimes it's time for something new and fresh. And Huzzie's sitting out there, and he told me back in January that when his name went in the portal, he said Carolina reached out quickly. Like they knew. Mm-hmm. They knew what he was all about, because in the FCS world, he had a tremendous reputation. He was All-American. He had 6 interceptions each of the last 2 years. You can look at the film when they played, what was it, Mississippi State or something like that. He was shutting down their receivers. He could play. Look on NFL rosters. There's dudes from East Tennessee State type schools all over the place on these NFL rosters. Mm-hmm. If you could play, you can play. And so many guys become different players when they get to college. I think there's more misses in recruiting in football on a percentage basis than there are in basketball, because there are a lot of variables. You can't really tell if a guy has them or not when you're recruiting them like you can in basketball. And a guy like him, he had nothing really coming out of high school. And here he is. In fact, he had no stars coming out of high school. It's crazy. No stars.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he's going to play in the NFL. They've got 4 guys on the defense that I think right now are strong contention for first team all ACC, and they're NFL players. They got more than that on the NFL players on defense. But, and by the way, let's throw a quick shot at Des Evans. He's grading at 71.7. Yeah,
he's been good this year.
He's been consistent. This is by far the best football he's ever played, and he's turning himself into an NFL player as well. He's going to be in a camp somewhere for a while. He'll be in camp next July somewhere for sure. Yeah. And if Huzzie leaves, he will too. So the compliment that they have at Jack, at inside linebacker, and at the star / one of those corner spots, that's good, really, really good right there.
It's playmakers.
It's really good.
That's the word that sparks to mind when I think Rucker, Gray, and Huzzie. It's playmakers on defense. That's what they do. They make plays, they fly around, and they make things happen. And you have to have guys like that on defense. How many times have Carolina fans been calling out over the past couple of years when the defense has struggled of, can someone just make a play? These are 3 guys that can do that. Yeah. So it's big time.
Be the one. Mm-hmm. They haven't had a lot of be the one moments on defense since Mac arrived. They had a few the first year. Chaz's interception against Duke comes to mind. Yep. And Chaz, the kind of mindset that we're talking about with Power, with Cedric, with Huzzie, with Rucker. I mean, that's the kind of wiring that they have. So they are wired to be playmakers, and they've been given natural gifts to, if they fortify those gifts, that they can become that. And that's what all 4 have done.
Yeah, no, it's that was an easy list for defense. There's some other guys that could get honorable mention shouts. We won't do those in this show. But
by the way, I threw Power in a lot to give Power a little bit. Yeah,
no, again, Power is somebody that could be very close.
A little 3-star love. He gets like a partial star.
We'll give him an honorable mention, AJ. He's an honorable mention on defense for sure. We'll give Power Echols the nod on that. If we were handing out slices of cake, Power would get a bite of each of the other 3 slices of cake. Just to get a little fork, just off the side, off the corner. Yeah, not completely great. I'll do honorable mention on offense just to throw one in as well. I'll go with Maye Hampton. I know his stats against P5 hasn't been fantastic this year, but I've liked some of the development I've seen. I think he was big time against App and again, leading rusher for the Tar Heels. I think he's kind of emerged as that number 1 back so far, and he can do a lot of improvement. So that's my honorable mention on offense. If you disagree or want to throw anybody else in there, AJ, feel free, but we can wrap this one up regardless.
I would go Kobe Paysor simply because he's learning. He's playing out wide right now. And we saw him start to come to life a little bit more this past week because the Minnesota game was his first game out wide, but he's really good the first 2 games in slot. He's going to get better and better and better. And again, we keep talking about how this team's going to keep getting better. He's now on the outside. So Kobe's going to be really good on the outside. In a month from now, he's going to get 6, 7, 8 catches, and you guys are going to be like, boy, that's Kobe being Kobe, and he's going to be doing it from the outside. 97.1 of his snaps, I think, the other night were from the outside.
Yeah, no,
before McCollum came back, that was from the slot, and it's a lot different. People may not understand. There's a big difference between going wide and playing in slot.
Mm-hmm. No, his versatility is huge, and I do agree. I think he's going to emerge even. Maybe we'll do another one of these after a little bit later on in the season, and we can kind of.
We'll do it after 4 more games.
We can just do 4. Yeah, it's good.
So that would be after
Georgia Tech, right?
Georgia Tech.
Yep, yeah. Georgia Tech. Yeah, we'll
it'll be the Halloween version of the 3 stars.
Yeah, that'll be good. I like that, man. That'll be fun to do. We'll go ahead and head on out on this one. Again, stay tuned. Keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Big thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this show. Links in the description to check them out. BetterHelp.com/THI. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell too, so you know every single time we upload. See you on the next one. Thanks.